What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the NASCAR Cup Series live before something stream. And again, for those of you that are here for the first time, expecting to see Brandon NASCAR, I apologize. He's in Atlanta, actually at the races, boots on the ground, so to speak. So it's just going to be little old me handling all this. I thought we did a pretty good job yesterday with it. And when I say we, it's not just kind of like the proverbial we, just because I know I was the only one doing it, but it was a good kind of team effort between me going through what I thought and the Discord and the live chat contributing a lot of takes, which I thought was very, very helpful. And between that and my lineup construction advice, I thought, and a couple of things I talked about, I thought were pretty prescient. I thought we did a good job in Brandon's absence. When he's back, it'll be obviously a lot more in depth. But listen, we got it going at least. By the way, for those of you that are just NASCAR and weren't watching, I'm continuing my kind of macro run good right now. I whined enough about PGA Showdown to have the PGA Showdown gods reward me for that yesterday. So we took down the MME PGA Showdown, just using my sheets and using my using the Sims and kind of screwing around a little bit, and obviously running like Jesus. But that's obviously very important. Okay, so let's I want to look at one thing. I want to pull up the Xfinity thing for a second. Oh, you doubled your money in the trucks? Good. Yeah, that's right, Coach. It just, got to be blessed. You got to have it, man. You got to click that run good button in SaberSim. You got to know where it is because they hide it sometimes. So I want to talk about whatchamacallit, about Xfinity yesterday, just for this purpose. And it's gonna get into what we talk about today as well. First of all, this was a weird lineup that I had in the single entry that ended up cashing. I can't even imagine how it cashed. You know what I mean? I didn't have anybody. I didn't have the winner. I didn't have Jesse Love with all of his, all of those dominator points. I didn't have anybody, but this thing somehow cashed. I don't know exactly what it is, but I guess the fact that three of the guys were 10% owned kind of helped. Like the Clemens, I guess the Clemens 57 and 10% owned. I guess that kind of carried the day. I was just curious about this. And the other thing that we talked about yesterday, as we kind of get into today, and I do have a lot of thoughts about today, is we talked about the dynamic of what it means to be able to get to the front. Okay, where we were talked about Jesse Love and Austin Hill for like a while yesterday, and just the idea. I talked about harness racing. I talked about how important it is that if you can get to the front and dominate the whole race, you just put yourself in an incredible position. And we talked about the possibility that Austin Hill just didn't have it, and Jesse Love, as because he was his teammate, could just take over the whole freaking race. And that's exactly what happened. Forget what happened at the end. I didn't even see what happened at the end. I guess everybody ran out of gas or something. And so he ended up getting 12th. But forget that. I mean, the hero was freaking Jesse Love, to say the least. And that can happen. And that's listen. Place differential is certainly important, but when a racetrack is such that it becomes difficult to pass, getting the front and getting those laps led points. Remember, those points can never be taken away from you. I know those of you that are here that have been doing NASCAR think I might be very, very basic about this. Yeah, it's true, but it's something to think about. Like if you start 31st and you play a guy for place differential points, I mean, you don't get those points really till the end. Where if you lead 100 laps, those points are booked. And that's really important, I think, when you're projecting lineups and projecting results. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I want to talk about this race from the perspective of, and I want to get everybody's opinion here, of recency bias and track history. Because I talked about this a little yesterday, and NASCAR and NASCAR DFS analysis, and this is the way it is, it's extremely focused on course history. And like how a guy, and that's the first thing you see people cite when they talk about drivers is what their average place finish was at this particular track, for example. And I mean, I imagine that has some relevance, but those types of analyses really, I mean, in my opinion, it's not even my opinion, statistically, really suffer from sample size issues. You know, to say someone's a good play because they have a good average finishing position at a certain track when they've raced on it 6 times or something like that. I mean, to me, it really overstates the course history. It overstates the track fit. That's statistically. I don't know if I'm being too naive about that, but that's always the impression that I get from content when they talk about NASCAR, particularly. Like XYZ is really good at Atlanta. XYZ is whatever. I would not get too carried away with that. That's the first thing. The second thing, as we get into today, is the nature of this Atlanta track. And think about what I just said. We went into yesterday thinking that it was possible that it could be a wreck fest, right? There was a lot of people that thought that in here. You know, that just play it for a wreck fest, play it for whatever. And there were some people that thought that, oh, but if it isn't, then, you know, then maybe we should play guys that are just going to dominate whatever. But people weren't really sure, you know, but there were quite a few people that were just jamming this idea that because it was sort of a super speedway that we'd want to just, you know, play place differential. And what ended up happening was that it was one guy leading the whole race and no one could pass, like the whole race. So the question I have philosophically, or not even philosophically, as it applies to today, is what does that mean, if anything? You know, what happened yesterday, right? So yeah, so and Kyle is continuing the discussion like perfectly, right? So is what happened yesterday just something that's going to happen always? Or is it something that just happened yesterday? Or we'll talk about Logano last year. He started first, led 140 laps, whatever. Are 2 examples enough to make you want to play, for example, like Michael McDowell? We're getting to that, you know, because he's got the pole, right? And it's the same idea, right? That if Logano doesn't get the lead, maybe McDowell does. Yeah, John, I apologize. Cruz is in Atlanta, so he's off from this today, and I apologize. This is the best we're going to do. So he'll be back though. So when we analyze how to deal with today's race, I'm expecting that the majority of the ownership of the lineups are going to follow what happened yesterday, and to some degree what happened last year, right, where Logano just got out there, got in front, and dominated the race. Okay, so you know, from a GPP perspective and from a game theory optimal perspective, do we want to do that? You know what I mean? Like, do we want to go with what we saw yesterday and last year, knowing that that's what everybody else is doing? Or do we want to play the sample size game and say, well, you know what? The amount that those types of lineups are going to be played is not going to come in as often as you think. You know, maybe that those particular results happen only, I don't know, 65% of the time, instead of 100% of the time, which is the way it's being kind of dealt with. So that's something to think about, I think. The other thing is that I was looking at some content, and I was looking at some takes and all this stuff, and you can already start to see how concentrated the industry is, and how the ownership is starting to really, really grind. Okay, if you poll the industry and you go around, like, you're getting literally the same takes. Okay, and that's not to say that they're not the most likely to win, because people are experts, right? They know what they're looking at, and most people that know what they're talking about are gonna come to the same sort of conclusion. Okay, but it doesn't mean that it happens as often as maybe it's being priced. As far as ownership goes. So this is why, like, when I go through this, I really want to separate the plays from the lineup construction, and what you're playing. And that's why I know you guys don't like it. Not you guys. A lot of you don't like it. But I like to use the sims to build my lineups in these types of contests, because I don't really want to use the game sims, as we talked about like a couple weeks ago, as Ace Stukas. I mean, is that his name? Ace Stuck, whatever. As he and everybody here quite accurately pointed out, like, actually trying to sim the race is something that they just haven't been able to do right yet, I don't think. But to do the contest sim piece, I think, is really important. And that's why I am going to, that's why I'm continuing to do that. So, I mean, we could go over the plays. So the plays seem to me to be sort of like obvious. Like, everybody's doing the same thing. So you have guys from the front that make sense, and guys from the back that make sense. The guys from the back that people are playing that project well, that whatever, are good drivers with bad positions, right? So Chase Elliott, and a combination of good values. So Chase Elliott doesn't have the greatest value, but great driver from the back. Eric Jones, good mid-range play from the back. He's being played. Makes a lot of sense, right? Corey LaJoie, who we talked about several times already in the last couple of weeks, is being kind of that driver that's expected to take a step forward. He's from the back, and he's 6,800. So all those guys that I mentioned certainly make a lot of sense, and as a matter of fact, they're all going to be played that way. Another guy that I kind of like is in general is Ross Chastain, and I guess part of it, I'm like one of those idiots that gets kind of lured in by the visual. But I remember last year when he made that ridiculous run, like, alongside to get a win. I mean, like, the guy's freaking obviously out of his mind. And I like guys like that. I like guys that are out of their mind on the racetrack when they're not going to be the highest owned guy on the slate. Right? When the guy's going to be the highest owned guy on the slate, then I don't like guys that are out of their mind. But so Ross Chastain, I like him as well. And it's no accident that, I mean, like, all these guys that I'm mentioning in my initial builds, I'm getting probably the most ownership of, right? So Chase Elliott, Eric Jones, Keselowski, another one. So all these guys make a lot of sense. The other guys that make a lot of sense, like we said, are guys that are near the front that can be like Jesse Love, or somebody that can just get out there and crank and be Joey Logano like last year. So I guess the first guy that you could turn to that could be like Joey Logano is Joey Logano. So he's got the 2-hole, and ostensibly you can tell the story pretty easily. All he's got to do is get around Michael McDowell, and he's off to the races, so to speak, for as long as he feels like it. And he could crank up the laps led for a long time, and he could get the win. The only thing that I would say is that, and again, it's going to come down to construction, I guess, is that at 10-3, he's really got to do that, sort of. You know what I mean? Like, at 10-3, he's I don't want to say he's got to win, but boy, oh boy, if he doesn't win, it's going to be tough. I think if I sim this race out 100 times, a million times, he's got to put on the same type of performance that he did last year. I think. Again, I'm not really good with this stuff, but with the sims and stuff, but about actually simming a race, but when you start to tell the story about how the race is going to go, like look at this first lineup here. It's kind of just a sample lineup. This is the one that just makes a lot of sense, right? Joey Logano gets out there, blasts everybody, opens up on the field, wins the race, okay, and then all these guys, Eric Jones, Corey LaJoie, Chase Elliott, they pick up enough position points to win the place differential game, and then you're kind of in good shape, okay, and that certainly makes a lot of sense. I'm actually a little surprised, by the way, at the ownership of Joey Logano. I thought that he would be more that he'd be higher owned, but I guess people are looking at it the same way I am. I suppose that he's got to be perfect, but I'll say this: as far as the ability to pass, listen, I don't know too much about the intricacies of things, but I know what I saw. And what I saw yesterday was this one little clip was AJ Allmendinger was in the main line, okay, of cars, and somehow he kind of got cut off and got sent down to the bottom row or something. And he went from third to 15th in about the blink of an eye. Okay. So he had to beg to get back into traffic. So if that's going to be the case, that one groove is just impossible, then passing is going to be really, really tough. Okay, yeah, well, there you go, Sterling. I mean, if you're right, then 20% ownership on him is probably almost a steal, given what we saw yesterday. Presuming what that was going to happen today, okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I don't think you can do is play him. I guess you could with all the chalky place differential guys like the Chase Elliott, Eric Jones, Corey LaJoie, or whatever. I think you got to be somewhat different. Let me suggest a couple of other dudes. Okay, first of all, in a weird way, I think that Michael McDowell, 15% ownership. Do you think? I guess I'll put it out there to you guys that people are going to play Michael McDowell a little higher than normal because of what Jesse Love did yesterday. I don't know. I mean, in the NBA, the NBA is so freaking sharp that they don't care. They have a very short memory and they don't do stuff like that. But I just wonder if in NASCAR people will just see what Jesse Love did, and they're just going to want a piece of that game script, sort of. And Michael McDowell, you'd imagine that he would he saw yesterday also, and he just kind of want to get to the front. The other thing I guess I would think about, I don't really know this too much, but who is going to be behind Michael McDowell? I'm guessing that it's Kyle Busch because he's the 3. That's the way it works, right? It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. I imagine that's the case. And not this whole race comes down to 5 seconds, right? But I think if Kyle Busch were smart, by the way, if anybody could get what's his name to the lead, Michael McDowell, instead of Logano, I think it would probably be to the whole field's advantage for that to happen. So if somebody would give a push to McDowell right out of the gate, so to speak, or right off the jump, or whatever you call it, I think that's a narrative. I think that can happen. Right. Very, very good. Thank you, Sterling. Perfect. So yeah. So I think that McDowell getting to the front is certainly something that can happen. Okay. The other thing that you can listen. Maybe we're way too in the weeds here, but and it's not all about the first 50 yards of the race, so the hundreds of miles. But if in fact this is the high line is the way to go, I presume it's going to be again. McDowell's going to pick up there. I mean, it's possible that I don't know that Logano gets shuffled back to shuffle back a little bit, right? And if that's the case, then that Logano thing is kind of rough. But I do think that it's probably wise to pick one of those two guys, just because of what we saw yesterday. And the other thing we have to talk about are these other guys that are near the front. So like Kyle Busch, I mean, he's been around the block, right? I mean, he knows what's what. And he's going to be, I imagine, lower owned. He's like 14%. Look at some of these other guys near the front. Kyle Larson, 13%. Ryan Blaney. Okay, so Ryan Blaney busted the entire civilized world in the Daytona 500 as chalk, right? I imagine. I think that's accurate. And so he is the same price as Logano, who's got the course history, who's got the 2-hole. But then Blaney, he's not even that lower owned. Yeah, so I just wonder if you're supposed to play some of these other guys in the front. Okay, except for Logano and McDowell. So it's and this type of analysis is really like what we used to do with harness racing, like all the time. We'd spend like hours, not hours, but a long time just figuring out who's going to get to the lead. Okay. Now, what you're also saying, Sterling, is really important. That Logano's great on pit road. So Logano can let, if they just line up 1-2, sort of, then at pit road he can retake. And that's definitely possible. But let's remember that it is possible that there are wrecks, okay? And this is, and if you get too bogged down with this, you're going to lose your mind. So the next thing I want to talk about, then we're going to run the sims. We're just going to do this and see what we got. Is we just did two different things. First, we talked about the fact that all these guys from the back are good, really good drivers or cheap with good price differential upside. Then we could spend a good amount of time talking about the dominator piece, like what should these 2 or 3 guys get in the front. So I would imagine that the group in the middle are the ones that are going to be the big GPP winners if they actually get it done. Okay, because most people are going to talk about exactly what we just did. Good place differential plays and guys in the front that can get to the lead. So these guys that are in the middle might be kind of dudes, that could get there at very, very low ownership, because they're just going to get ignored. The guy a couple of guys I just kind of want to highlight just because these guys did well for me last year. So Carson Hocevar has done better. He's from the 35 hole. We talked about that, but Daniel Suarez, the 23, maybe he doesn't get as much love. Bubba Wallace in the 18, maybe. Okay, so I think that this is a race from a GPP perspective. Okay, so let's talk about it another way. If we're going to figure out what's going to happen in the race and get the most likely outcome, I think it's pretty easy. You know what I mean? You play either Logano or somebody around him, and then you play those dudes from the back. And then you play the Chase Elliott's and Eric Jones, Corey LaJoie, some combination of those. and you have a good lineup that you are, unfortunately, you're now competing with like 40, with a bunch of dupes. And if not necessarily dupes, you're getting like, you're fighting a whole bunch of 2v2s. Okay. So that's definitely one way to go. But what I'm going to do on this particular slate, and again, you don't have to do this, but this is what I'm doing. I'm going to run some sims, and then I'm going to do some funny business with the ownership. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to force myself to not play that type of construction. So what I did already was I did run the sims here, and I'm building 50 lines. Actually, I'm playing 40. No, how many am I playing? That's a good question. I'm playing 40 lineups in the main GPP, and what I already ran the sims, and this is kind of what it would look like. So what this does is this is comparing actually I built like 5,000 lineups. The top 40 rated by risk-adjusted ROI compared to I used build 2 as my field of lineups. So this entire 5,000 lineup builds, I'm comparing my lineups to it and seeing where I'm going to get the most amount of leverage. So I'm rating it by top 40 by risk-adjusted ROI, but I don't think that's going to be good enough. I want to get a little more different. So the first thing I want to do is I want to jam like min uniques. In other words, making it less min unique. I mean, more min uniques. It's like as much as possible to get different. So we can go min uniques 4, min uniques 5. When you go to min uniques 5, it yells at you. So then you go to min uniques 4, and then you go to min uniques 3. So this is one thing you could do. Okay. And then you see, like, you get a little more ownership from other guys, like more Christopher Bell, more Daniel Suarez, you know, and that's the first thing I'm going to do. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I am going to do something with the geo mean, just for this particular slate. And again, I don't know the answer. Okay, I don't know the best way to do this, so I'm experimenting like everybody else. Like everybody else, no one's figured this whole thing out yet. So I'm just telling you the thing I'm doing today is I am going to do some geo mean filtering, meaning that I'm going to force myself to have lower ownership. So what we got to do is we got to figure out what that is. So we're going to look at how many lineups are going to be in this. There's 31,372. We have this on the site, but just as my own personal spreadsheet as well. 6 players in the lineup, 31,372. Let's say a max of 1, for example. And we want a geo mean then of under 18. Okay? That's going to be tough. I mean, look at some of these geo means. I don't even think we're going to be able to get them. Okay? But just to prove it, let's first go back to min uniques 1. And let's just see what happens when we do this. We do like we'll go geo mean less than 18. I don't even know if we're going to get them. Let's see. Yeah, you can actually. You can do this. You can do this with a geo mean of 18. Now, you're not going to like it. Okay? I promise you're not going to like it. But you can certainly do it. Now, what I like to do then is get a little greedy and see if I can go min uniques 2 or 3. Ooh, I can do it. Then min uniques 3, min uniques 4. So this could work. Wow, this is crazy. And then we go back to min uniques 3. And then you can kind of play it like this, like in the big GPP. Now this is again, this is sort of nasty, okay? And you got to be kind of willing to accept that, you're not getting your best plays necessarily. But I think that given everything that I just said, about how people are convinced that what's going to happen yesterday is going to happen today, and you have such concentrated ownership in some of these guys that I think that's what I am going to do on this slate. That doesn't mean everybody else has to. So if we take the filter off, the geo mean filter off, now you know what you have now. Now you have the better plays again. And I know it's ridiculous, right? Why figure out who the better plays are if you're not going to play them? All I can tell you is that I can tell you more, but that's what DFS is. It just is. It's not just making the best plays. And listen, it totally depends on the contest. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, the less players the less people you're against, the less different you have to get. And that's, by the way, why this geo mean filtering stuff actually works. You know, like if you're playing a tournament with, only like 1,000 people, for example, I mean, then you can play whatever you want. You know, your geo mean of 31, I mean, you get everybody. So and that's what I think is cool about these sims, is that they run a different set of lineups for each type of contest that you're in. Like for the wind tunnel, for example, I mean, I'm not playing all that. I'm not playing all that other nonsense. But for the big one, for like playing, it's 30,000 people. I think that you kind of have to. I think you kind of have to play that way. But I don't know. To answer questions that people will have about this all the time, you see that I'm leaving money on the table in some places. As you've seen, that's just completely by accident. I mean, I'm not doing this on purpose. It's just kind of happening organically, and that I think is fine. Like my point is that I'm not intentionally leaving money on the table, but if I get to them, then I'll keep it. Okay. And once again, for those of you that are here for the first time, it's almost never going to be me. I shouldn't say never going to be me. It's almost never going to be only me. If I have time during subsequent Sundays, when Brandon's doing this, I'll probably be here just to kind of give my lineup building advice on top of his constructive takes. But today I'm just kind of doing the best I can. I guess that's pretty much all that I have. If you guys want to yap more about this, you could go into the Discord. I mean, you have like several hours, obviously, before the race. And the cool thing is there's not going to be any late scratches or anything like that. I'm not going to update any of the projections from now until then, I don't believe. And when does it start? 3:30? Well, what could be cool is that I'm going to be doing an NBA live stream at 6. We go over the NBA stuff from 6 to 7. So I guess it's possible that that's when this race might be coming down to the end. Maybe. I'm not even sure. Sounds right. And if so, maybe we get a live sweat out of this. Lock is 3:17. How long do you think the race is going to be? 3 hours? Assuming not a lot of baloney? Let's just look at the TV schedule to figure that out. But it sounds right. About 3 hours for this race? I mean, if so, then when I go on at 6 o'clock for the NBA, we'll sweat the last bit of business. The answer, Sunsoft, is I'm sure there are. I just don't know what they are. And again, I'm the worst. I'm going to tell you. I guess you go to TrueDFS.com and it'll should probably list out whatever those trials are. I think. I'm not sure, but yeah, they're in there somewhere. I'm sure. And